Mizuto was a pathetic loser who got dumped for being ugly, but one day, his dad finally came back with milk and brought home a stepsister for him, who turned out to be his ex. The whole story kicks off with Yume and Mizuto already arguing at the front door, bickering over something as pointless as who should walk out first. Right in the middle of their pointless fight, Yumi's mom, Uni, spots them. Instantly, the two switch from hostile mode to pretend friendly mode. Before leaving, Uni casually tells Mizuto to look after Yume, and even though he doesn't want to, he still agrees. As soon as the door closes, Yume demands to know why he accepted that responsibility, and Mizuto explains that Uni basically cornered him. From the way they keep taking jabs at each other, it's obvious they cannot stand one another. Later in the evening, everyone sits down for dinner together. Once the meal ends, Yume and Mizuto get stuck doing kitchen duty as a team. While they clean, Uni comments about how nicely they're getting along, and Minaki backs her up, saying he was stressing for nothing. Uni then mentions that step-siblings can still behave like normal family members. Yume and Mizuto overhear the entire conversation. Yume quietly tells Mizuto they should avoid causing any drama. Mizuto agrees, promising never to reveal the romantic history they once had. He then teases her for acting bossy when she wasn't like that in the past, and she blames him for making her the way she is now. After Mizuto goes back to his room to read, Yume knocks and walks in. She has a new goal: to find out which of them counts as the older sibling. Claiming she was born 30 minutes earlier, she tells Mizuto he should call her the older one. Mizuto refuses and insists he's the oldest. He even throws out a random made-up historical rule that younger twins used to be treated as the firstborn. But Yume immediately calls out his nonsense. When neither of them backs down, he suggests they settle the matter with a competition. Yume accepts and adds another rule: neither of them can reveal their past relationship to the parents. The first person to slip and act weird loses. Mizuto adds that any behavior that doesn't match typical step-sibling interaction counts as a penalty. They both agree the rules stay active even if the parents aren't home. Whoever wins each slip-up round gets to assign a punishment to the loser. Their sibling war officially begins. Yume tries to annoy him first by poking around his bookshelf. Mizuto almost snaps at her until he remembers the rules and realizes she's trying to trick him into reacting. If he gets irritated by something normal siblings do, he'll immediately lose. To make things worse, he has a drawer nearby that contains something he wants to keep hidden. As if she can sense his fear, Yume starts heading straight for that drawer. Mizuto panics and blurts out a sudden apology, shocking her. He then throws out another fake apology to keep her distracted. The tone of his voice makes Yume remember the guy she used to love, and she blushes. Without thinking, she calls him by his last name, something no siblings would say. Instant fail. She loses the first round of her own challenge. Mizuto doesn't waste a second before telling her she now has to call him Oni-chan. Yume, feeling betrayed, does it but clearly hates every moment of it. Mizuto hides the fact that her tone gets to him and pretends he's victorious. Yume snaps that he never treated her like this before. Feeling guilty, he pats her head, but she shoves his hand away and storms out. The next morning, both of them find out that not only are they attending the same school, but they're also placed in the same class, meaning pretending to be distant won't work. During the entrance event, Yume tells Mizuto that they should start walking to school separately, and he agrees immediately. Afterwards, a bunch of girls surround Yume and compliment her speech because she was chosen as the first-year representative. Mizuto feels irritated because he didn't even know she scored high enough to get that position. She's getting main character treatment while he feels like a background NPC. As class orientation begins, two boys approach Mizuto, wanting to be his friends. For a moment, he thinks he's being noticed until one of them instantly asks about Yume, crushing his moment. Later, he goes to the bathroom to think. Those same boys walk in, talking about how they want to get closer to him just to reach Yume. When Mizuto returns home afterward, Yume confronts him. She asks if he's bothered by the way people act around him. She knows those boys had ulterior motives, but Mizuto brushes it off and goes to his room, leaving her feeling uneasy. The next day, she secretly follows him even after he reminds her of their walk separately. Deal. When they reach school, the same boys approach Mizuto again, but Yume immediately grabs his arm and pulls him away, surprising everyone, including Mizuto. The boys ask if they're really siblings because the vibe feels like a couple. Yume quickly answers by saying she has a brother complex, confusing them further. That evening, Yumi gets a message from her mom saying she and Minaki will be late. When she tells Mizuto, he offers to cook because she can't. While they eat, she tells him to pretend the earlier moment when her plot armor brushed against him never happened. Mizuto calmly says he already forgot, which embarrasses her even more. Later, when she's in the bath, she keeps replaying how cold he acted. Frustrated, she tries to figure out a way to get a reaction out of him. Eventually, she comes up with a plan. Still wrapped only in a plot armor, she steps into the living room where Mizuto is sitting. Mizuto nearly spits out his drink when he sees her. Proud of her successful attack, she sits down and continues teasing him. Mizuto is clearly uncomfortable, but Yumi pushes harder, asking if he's the type of brother who would sneak peeks at his sister plots. His entire face turns red. She notices him occasionally glancing her way, which makes her even more confident until the towel begins sliding off. She quickly grabs it, suddenly regretting everything. Mizuto stands and walks toward her. She panics, thinking he might do something weird, but instead, he gently covers her with his jacket. He tells her that if she pulls these kinds of stunts, she'll ruin the reputation she built at school. Yuma fires back that she acted like that because she can't stand people disrespecting her family. Mizuto is touched and thanks her. She gets up to grab her clothes, but trips over some shirts and accidentally falls, somehow ending up with Mizuto on top of her. In that moment, memories from their old relationship come rushing back, and they slowly lean closer. Right before the plot develops, the front door opens. Their parents are home. Mizuto panics and tells her to hide inside the couch. When Yuni and Minaki walk in, they only see Mizuto. He lies and says, "Yum went to bed early." While hiding inside the couch, Yume wonders how things might have gone if they hadn't been interrupted. She admits she's starting to get used to their strange new relationship. Meanwhile, Mizuto sits on the couch wondering what he was doing. He had almost completely moved on from Yum. Yet in that moment, everything resurfaced. The following day rolls in, and the entire grade is lined up for their physical evaluations. While everyone else is preparing, Mizuto is deep in his book like the world doesn't exist. That's when a cheerful guy named Kogure strolls over and asks Mizuto to team up for the fitness drills. Mizuto immediately assumes this is another guy trying to use him to get closer to Yum. But Kogure straight up denies it and says he actually wants to hang out with him because he seems cool, not because of any girl. Mizuto still isn't fully buying it, but Kogure acts like the friendship is already official and moves on. Before the athletes start, the girls are told to go to the infirmary for their BMI measurements. Inside, Akatsuki, one of Yum's classmates, keeps staring at Yum's body like she's analyzing a statue. When Yum notices, Akatsuki apologizes awkwardly and compliments Yuma's figure while comparing it to her own insecurities. Yum tries to comfort her and admits she once had the same issues. Hearing that only makes Akatsuki more curious, and she even blurts out a totally inappropriate question about Yum's bra size. Yum is mortified but answers anyway. Akatsuki becomes overly enthusiastic and hugs her tightly, convinced that being near Yume might somehow magically fix her chest problem. After the measurements, everyone meets in the gym for the fitness challenge. Akatsuki grumbles about doing athletic tests in a prep school, and Yum agrees because she knows she's terrible at sports. Skills like makeup or personality she can polish, but being athletic feels impossible. Akatsuki goes first and absolutely shocks the entire class. Despite whining earlier, she performs like she's been training for months. When she finishes, Yum asks why she acted like she couldn't do sports, and Akatsuki says she never said she was bad, only that she hated them. Then it's Yum's turn. She's determined not to let anyone discover her secret weakness. She quickly glances across the gym and spots Mizuto lying flat on the floor, giving up on his sit-ups like his soul left his body. Seeing that disaster motivates her no way is she ending up like him. With pure stubbornness, she pushes through and does surprisingly well. She feels proud for a moment, but Akatsuki refuses to let her stop and drags her into the next part immediately. As they go through more trials, Yum realizes she's been completely fooled. Akatsuki is basically a sports monster. After the final run, Yum collapses from exhaustion. Right before she hits the ground, Mizuto somehow appears out of nowhere and catches her. Either he has hidden superpowers, or he was watching her like a hawk the whole time. He hands her over to Akatsuki, who is confused why Mizuto is still outside since the boys' drills ended ages ago. Akatsuki carries Yume to the nurse's office. Yume apologizes, saying she overdid it because she didn't want anyone to know she's terrible at sports. She even confesses she's been staying up late reading, training books and doing mini workouts to hide her weakness, which caused her to faint from sleep deprivation. Akatsuki is touched. She says she always thought Yum was untouchably perfect, but now she sees she's just a normal girl with fears and pressure like everyone else. Akatsuki teases her softly, and the two become official friends from that moment. When they walk back to class, Mizuto, now changed into his uniform, comments on Yum's dark circles, making her self-conscious. Before walking off, he laughs it off as a joke. Akatsuki studies their interaction and casually says Mizuto is surprisingly gentle with her. When Yume asks what she meant, Akatsuki refuses to elaborate, leaving her confused. The next day, Akatsuki panics when Mizuto explains Yum is absent because she has a fever. She fires a whole storm of questions at him until Kogyur pulls her away like he's rescuing Mizuto from interrogation. They argue the entire hallway like they've known each other for years. After a minute, Akatsuki returns to questioning Mizuto again. Finally, she decides she's visiting Yum after school. Kogyur is thrilled and wants to join, but she shuts him down instantly. On the walk back, Akatsuki questions Mizuto nonstop about his bond with Yum. They stop at a market where she picks up ingredients to cook something comforting. When they reach Mizuto's house, she praises how nice it looks and heads upstairs with him. They knock and enter Yuma's room, finding her asleep. When she groggily opens her eyes, she sees Mizuto and calls out to him affectionately, like she's remembering their dating days. Mizuto freaks out internally and quickly warns her Akatsuki is present. Yum snaps back to reality, startled to see her classmate. Akatsuki shows the groceries and says she came to cook for her, asking Mizuto to help. While they work in the kitchen, Akatsuki randomly asks Mizuto what he'd do if he got a girlfriend. She points out that bringing a girl home might be awkward. Mizuto jokes that he doesn't seem like the type to get one. But Akatsuki smirks and says she can tell from his behavior that he's definitely dated before. Mizuto doesn't confirm but doesn't deny it either. He only adds that even if he did date someone in the future, he wouldn't owe Yum any explanation. After they finish cooking, Akatsuki feeds Yum. Before leaving, she asks Mizuto one more time if he and Yum are truly just siblings. He confirms it, and she goes home. When Mizuto returns to Yuma's room, she mentions he seems pretty friendly with Akatsuki, sounding slightly jealous. Mizuto shrugs and says Akatsuki is just sociable with everyone. Yumi then quietly asks him to stay with her. Mizuto gives her his hand, and she holds it. As she does, he drifts into memories of middle school, the days when they adored each other endlessly. They were inseparable until tiny disagreements stacked up and eventually destroyed the relationship after graduation. He thought everything ended there, until his father suddenly remarried Yum's mother. Snapping back to the present, Mizuto stays beside her and continues helping her. After some time, he worries her fever is lasting too long and decides to check again. Yuma refuses, but eventually gives in. The thermometer shows her fever is gone. Mizuto immediately realizes she was pretending just to keep him there. He scolds her for manipulating him. Yum panics and hides under her blanket. Mizuto pulls it off and asks her to apologize. She does, and since she's still recovering, he lets her off. Embarrassed, she hides under the blanket again. As Mizuto gets ready to leave, she begs him not to go. Since they're siblings now, he stays and reassures her he won't leave. Yum then remembers her past self from half a year ago, the version of her completely obsessed with Mizuto. She treasured every tiny item he ever gave her and stored them inside a secret box. Every night, she'd stare at them like a worshipper, smiling creepily as if his random belongings were holy relics. She now sees that version of herself as an absolute lunatic. Back in the present, Yum notices Mizuto's underwear nearby. Before realizing what she's doing, she lifts it, smells it, and instantly recoils, tossing it away and burying herself under the blanket. She has no idea how she even ended up holding it. Panic hits her as she realizes she's slipping back into her weird old habits. She even blames Mizuto for daring to own underwear in the first place. She knows she's breaking their sibling rules badly, and if Mizuto finds out, there's no excuse that could save her. Her brain spirals, imagining Mizuto discovering her and calling her a pervert or scolding her for her bizarre behavior. Terrified, she decides she has to return the underwear before he notices. She listens for any sounds from his room. He's still awake and pacing around, which annoys her. After what feels like forever, the house finally goes completely silent around early morning. Yume listens carefully, no footsteps, no doors, nothing. It sounds like Mizuto has finally gone to sleep. This is her chance. She quietly slips out of her room, clutching Mizuto's underwear, planning to sneak into his room, return it, and get out before anyone notices. She peeks into the hallway, checks both sides like she's in a stealth game, then tiptoes toward Mizuto's door. Right before she reaches it, the door flies open. Mizuto steps out, holding her bra in his hand. They both freeze, staring at each other, each holding the other's underwear. It's so awkward it feels illegal. A few minutes later, they're sitting in the living room like suspects in an interrogation. To decide who has to talk first, they play Janken rock, paper, scissors. Yum loses. So now she has to explain why she was walking around with Mizuto's underwear like a thief. Backed into a corner, Yum gives herself up. She admits she relapsed into her old creepy habits, saying that if she were still her past self, she wouldn't even think twice about grabbing his underwear. Mizuto catches that and asks what she means. Was that kind of behavior normal for her before? He tells her this is the perfect chance to spit out everything and stop hiding stuff. So Yum finally confesses, back when they dated, she literally kept every single thing Mizuto gave her, even the smallest stuff. Mizuto pretends it doesn't bother him, but the tips of his ears turn red. Yum notices and asks if he's secretly happy she treasured his presence. He coldly denies it, trying way too hard to act unfazed. To avoid talking about his own situation, Mizuto drags things out, but Yum eventually brings up the obvious: why is he holding her bra? He claims it was an accident. He says it fell on the floor, he picked it up, and at that exact moment his dad walked into the room. Panicking, he hid it so it wouldn't look like he was doing something pervy. After that, he missed the right timing to put it back. Yumi just squints at him, totally unconvinced, accusing him of purposely keeping it because he wanted her bra. Mizuto denies it like his dignity is on the line, because it is. He fires back, saying she did the same thing with his underwear. Yumi gives the same: it fell. Someone came in, no chance to return it. Excuse he used, saying her mom walked in and she panicked. Mizuto thinks the story sounds way too similar to his. Yum then narrows her eyes and asks the important question: are you sure you didn't do anything weird to my bra? Mizuto confidently says no. Then she asks, you didn't poke the cups or anything, right? He goes silent for a second, then denies it. That tiny pause tells Yum everything she needs to know. Mizuto shoots back with his own question. You didn't do anything strange with my underwear, like smelling it or something, right? Now it's Yum's turn to freeze for a moment before answering, which very much does not help her case. He lets it slide, but tells her they should erase this entire incident from existence and never talk about it again. Yum agrees instantly. They both know they messed up, since both of them acted in ways that are absolutely not normal for step-siblings. Yum declares that they technically both lost their sibling game. Mizuto says if that's the case, they each get to use one command on the other. With morning coming soon and their parents about to wake up, Mizuto suggests a condition. Inside the house, they act like the sweetest, most well-behaved siblings ever. Outside, they can do whatever they want as long as they don't cause any drama. The next day after school, Yum is walking home when she spots Mizuto up ahead talking to a girl. The girl looks a lot like how Yuma used to look in junior high. Same vibe, same style. Yuma stops in her tracks. Jealousy hits her instantly. She remembers Mizuto saying they could act however they wanted outside, and now she assumes this is exactly what he meant. The following day, she asks Akatsuki if she recognizes the girl. Akatsuki says there are tons of girls at school who match that description. Then, casually, she starts praising Mizuto for already managing to get himself a girlfriend. Yume completely zones out, her head spinning with thoughts. She tells herself she's only worried that Mizuto is taking advantage of some innocent girl. But deep down, she knows that's not the real reason she's upset. Later, when Yum gets home, she immediately notices a pair of unfamiliar women's shoes by the entrance. Her heart drops. She assumes Mizuto actually brought that girl to the house. She's angry that this random girl has already visited his place. Back when they dated, it took Yum half a year to step foot in his home. Trying to stay calm, Yum takes a photo of the shoes like a detective collecting evidence. Then she calls Mizuto. After confirming he's inside, she politely asks him to go buy something for her. Mizuto teases her for acting all cute, but eventually agrees and says she owes him a favor later. Once she thinks he's left, Yum marches toward his room, ready to confront the girl alone and warn her about Mizuto. Just as she reaches the door, it opens and Mizuto walks out again. She freezes, horrified, then she rushes inside his room, but there's no one there. She runs back out and accuses him of sending the girl home early. Mizuto looks genuinely lost, saying he has no idea what she's talking about. Yum shoves the picture of the shoes in his face, telling him she has proof. Mizuto tells her to go check her own room instead. Confused, she goes back, looks around, and realizes nothing is moved. Nothing is cleaned, nothing is different. When she demands an explanation, Mizuto just sighs and admits, "Yeah, I've been caught," then tries to brush past her, saying he's tired and going to his room. Yuma's mind races, with all kinds of wild scenarios about what he and that mystery girl were doing. When she presses him, he says he doesn't owe her an explanation and casually mentions he'll be more careful next time, making her even more paranoid. On his way out of the living room, Mizuto notices something subtle but strange. An extra chair has been added to their dinner table. He stays completely calm and acts like he didn't see it. Back in her room, Yum questions whether she's overreacting and creating scenarios in her head, like she always does. Meanwhile, Mizuto sits alone and puts everything together. All signs point to a single person, and he knows exactly who: Akatsuki. He remembers being in the library when Akatsuki suddenly appeared in disguise and proposed to him out of nowhere. Mizuto was stunned. She asked if he really couldn't recognize her. Once she removed the fake hair and makeup, he realized it was her. Mizuto, completely confused, asked if she actually liked him. Akatsuki said that wasn't the point. Her main goal? If she marries him, that means Yume automatically becomes her sister. That's her master plan. She goes on and on about how much she loves Yum and cherishes the bond they've built, like she's talking about a years-long friendship. Even though it's only been a short time, Mizuto just stares at her, wondering what dimension she's living in. She even follows him all the way home that day, clinging to the idea of marriage, repeating that he should marry her so she can officially become Yuma's sister. She keeps pestering him right up to his front door. In the present, Mizuto calls Kogoro and explains everything. He asks what Akatsuki is really like. Kogoro tells him that Akatsuki is the type who goes all in. Once she gets hooked on something or someone, she becomes completely consumed. He mentions a guy she dated in middle school. At first, things were great. She doted on him constantly, spent every moment with him, smothered him with attention. After about 3 months, the guy literally collapsed from stress and ended up in the hospital. That's how intense she gets. Kogoro warns Mizuto that this is what makes Akatsuki scary. She loves so hard that it becomes torture. Mizuto thinks Kogoro might be exaggerating, but he also knows it doesn't sound impossible. Kogoro tells him to stand his ground and not give in to her weird, marry me plan. But just in case that fails, they decide they need a backup strategy. Kogoro suggests a more direct approach. Make Akatsuki give up on Yum. The idea? Show Akatsuki that Yum only has eyes for Mizuto. So, Kogoro comes up with a plan and shares it with Mizuto. All Mizuto has to do is use his punishment right from the underwear incident and turn Yum's brother complex into something Akatsuki can't compete with. Mizuto goes to Yum's room, knocks, and when she opens the door, he tells her he's ready to use his punishment. She's nervous, expecting something stupid and humiliating. Instead, Mizuto calmly tells her, "Go on a date with me." The next day, Yum waits at the meeting spot, overthinking everything. She tries to convince herself that going out like this is totally normal behavior for siblings. Deep down, she knows it's not. Soon, Mizuto shows up, dressed way better than usual. His outfit is clean, stylish, and honestly, kind of hot. Yume's heart absolutely melts. They start their date at an aquarium. While they stand in the ticket line, Yum feels super awkward. She can't stop thinking about how aquariums are usually for couples and families. She wonders why Mizuto picked this spot in particular. She tells herself it's not really a date, but she still feels like she's living her old fantasy again. At the counter, Mizuto buys the tickets. Yum badly wants to smile, but she forces herself to act uninterested, trying to hide how happy she is inside. After they walk in, Mizuto casually takes her hand. Yum internally explodes. Behind them, quietly tailing the two of them, are Akatsuki and Kogoro in suspicious spy mode. Earlier that day, Mizuto had met up with Kogoro, who helped dress him up and laid out the entire plan. Their goal? Make Yume's big brother obsession look real enough that Akatsuki will finally back off. Back in the present, fish drift lazily behind the glass, creating a romantic atmosphere Mizuto absolutely does not want to acknowledge. He already knows he can't tell Yum anything about Akatsuki stalking them. There's simply no explanation that wouldn't make him sound insane. Even so, he's stuck with this date. Whether he likes it or not, he has to play his part. Kogure had told him earlier to compliment Yume's clothes like a normal guy would, so Mizuto awkwardly throws out a snarky, half-hearted compliment. Immediately he regrets it, afraid he botched the moment. But Yuma simply replies with a quiet, "Thanks," and continues gazing into the enormous tank. Her reaction throws Mizuto off. She sounds shy, almost like a first-year girl talking to her crush for the first time, rather than an ex-girlfriend who used to know him inside out. Trying to break the tension, he attempts to tease her, but Yuma's strangely serious expression kills the mood even more. Meanwhile, Akatsuki is tailing them like a spy. Kogure whispers to her that Mizuto and Yuma are acting way more like a couple than siblings, and Akatsuki's eyes nearly pop out. As more people flood into the walkway, Mizuto spots a man and his child about to bump into Yuma. Instinctively, he pulls her closer by the shoulder. Yumi instantly melts from how good he smells and ends up staring at him intensely without even realizing it. She scolds herself internally. Why is he being so gentle today? Why does everything he does feel like it's ripping through her defenses? Snapping out of it, she grumbles, "How long are you planning to hold onto my shoulder?" Mizuto reacts immediately, pulling his hand away and apologizing, explaining he was just preventing her from getting pushed around by the crowd. Yuma shoots back, "I'm not a kid," but the moment the words leave her mouth, she regrets sounding rude. She braces herself for Mizuto's usual sarcasm, but he doesn't say anything. The silence only makes her more anxious. Meanwhile, Mizuto can feel her staring holes into his side, and it's making him sweat. He wonders why people even go on dates. Everything feels unnecessarily stressful. He excuses himself to go to the restroom and immediately calls Kogure, essentially begging for help. Kogure just laughs and tells him to handle it on his own. Mizuto hangs up, realizing he has no escape. Since he's the one who dragged her into this ridiculous plan in the first place, he needs to commit. Still, he can't stop thinking, why am I doing all of this for someone who isn't even my girlfriend anymore? And all because she's friends with a lunatic. Meanwhile, Yume wanders out of the restroom and ends up getting completely lost in the building. While she's panicking, Mizuto calls. When he asks where she is, Yume blurts out the most useless answer possible. Under the sky. She expects him to roast her for being an idiot. But instead, he gently apologizes for not staying close and tells her not to move. Yuma's face heats up. This version of Mizuto is way too sweet, and it scares her. As she waits, her thoughts drift back to before they started dating. She remembers how they never talked, even when they sat in the library at the same time. One day, she finally gathered all her courage and asked him out. Their first date was at a local festival, and she got lost just like today. She cried over the phone telling him she ruined everything. But Mizuto told her not to worry and to stay where she was. She used to think she was useless, clumsy, always causing trouble for the person she liked. Then he found her, bought her a drink, and told her she didn't need to be scared because he would always come for her. Back in the present, Mizuto finally spots her, hands her the same type of drink, and jokingly says he came to collect her. Yuma's heart nearly explodes. They continue walking around, and from Akatsuki's hiding spot, she can clearly see they're genuinely enjoying themselves, bickering included. Mizuto thinks back to their old relationship. Around the 6-month mark, little things Yume did started annoying him. It hurt him to admit it, but that buildup was what eventually ended their relationship. Now that they're simply step-siblings, things feel lighter. No pressure, no expectations. They don't owe each other love or resentment anymore. Surprisingly, the rest of the date goes smoothly. Mizuto even admits to himself that being siblings is way healthier than the messy romance they had before. When the date ends, Yume heads home first. Mizuto stays behind, zoned out, until he receives a message from Kogure, warning him that Akatsuki is on her way, and he needs to finalize the mission. Right then, Akatsuki appears behind him, pretending she just happened to walk by. Mizuto plays along. She apologizes for breaking into his house earlier, saying the door wasn't locked, so she assumed it was okay. Mizuto bluntly asks why she left an extra chair at their dining table. She tries to act innocent, then claims she was just joking around, like it's all a game to her. She apologizes again, but calmly repeats that she still plans to marry him. Back home, Yuma sits in her room, replaying everything. She still doesn't know why Mizuto suddenly took her on a date, and she hasn't stopped thinking about the mystery girl she saw earlier. She admits her detective skills are absolute garbage. When Mizuto finally returns, Yuma invites him to let her take pictures of him, her punishment from the underwear incident. Mizuto pretends to be annoyed, but immediately slips into model mode while Yuma snaps photos like an excited fan. When she finishes squealing over the pictures, Mizuto asks if she has one more request. She shyly asks him to hug her from behind and whisper something into her ear. Even though it's a ridiculous request, Mizuto gives her a soft back hug and whispers gently. The next morning, Akatsuki greets Yumi cheerfully. Not far away, Kogura stands with Mizuto and comments that their problem is solved. Mizuto disagrees. He feels like Akatsuki is just getting started. Kogura tells him to come to him if she does anything crazy again, saying he's the best person to deal with her. Suspicious, Mizuto asks if Kogura has ever been hospitalized. Kogura casually admits he was in middle school. Mizuto immediately connects the dots. He remembers a moment from a school trip years ago before he and Yum were together. One night, Yum thanked him for something, and he replied without thinking, "No problem." Then looked up at the sky and said, "The moon looks beautiful tonight." Yum froze. That phrase is usually used as a coded love confession. Mizuto quickly clarified he meant it literally. They ended up watching the moon in silence, and Mizuto still remembers that night vividly. Back in the present, Yum tells Mizuto it's time to go. He asks, "Go where?" She reminds him it's Mother's Day and suggests buying a gift for Uni together. Mizuto claims he forgot and doesn't understand why they should go as a pair. Yume argues that Uni would be thrilled to see them getting along. Mizuto still refuses. He wants his weekend quiet and stress-free. Yume walks away without arguing, but after a while, she returns wearing a pretty outfit and calls out to him. Mizuto looks up, immediately drops his book, and stares. Yum smirks. He broke their no reacting rule, so he's now forced to follow her shopping. They board a crowded train. A sudden shake throws Mizuto off balance, and he ends up leaning against Yum. Embarrassed, he tries to move away, but she stops him, saying the train will keep wobbling and they'll just bump again. Mizuto reluctantly stays where he is. When they reach the mall, they begin searching for a gift. Mizuto suggests a frying pan. Yuma rejects it instantly. He suggests couple mugs, then custom tableware. She shoots them down too. After going through half the store, they finally choose something. When they return home, they give Uni a bouquet of flowers and heartfelt words. Uni bursts into tears on the spot and rushes to show Minaki the gift. Yumi feels warm and satisfied, while Mizuto stays cold as usual. Later, Yumi notices a soft light coming from a room, and sees Mizuto quietly talking to a photo of his late mother. She watches until he notices her and invites her in. She apologizes for spying and asks if he remembers much about his mom. He tells her he doesn't. She passed away when he was very young. Yumi comforts him in her soft, awkward way. Afterward, Mizuto says the gift gave him an idea. Since his dad and Uni haven't had real newlywed time, he suggests giving them a night to themselves. Yumi is impressed by how thoughtful he can be. She suggests buying them trip tickets or fancy vouchers, but both are too expensive. Instead, Mizuto proposes that they spend a night away from home. Yum immediately panics, thinking he means staying together. Mizuto clarifies that they won't be sharing a room. She calms down. Since they need a cheap and private place, Mizuto says there's only one option left: a love hotel. Yuma nearly chokes. Mizuto adds that they don't need to give their real ages. Yuma is horrified he even considered it, but Mizuto admits he knew it probably wouldn't work anyway, especially after seeing the crazy prices. Yuma still can't believe he'd be willing to go that far. Mizuto shrugs and says he'd only do it if they had literally no other choice. The morning after their chaotic study night, Mizuto casually announces during breakfast that he managed to find a better solution for their overnight stay. He turns his screen toward Yuma, showing a message thread with Kogure. Mizuto will be staying in Kogure's apartment, while Yume will be staying right next door with Akatsuki. Both of them freeze when they realize Akatsuki and Kogure are literally next door neighbors, something neither of them ever expected. When the day arrives, the two siblings head to the apartment building. Akatsuki greets them with sparkling eyes, secretly thrilled that Mizuto arranged everything this way. In her mind, this is her chance to have Yuma all to herself, like some kind of fantasy come to life. Mizuto warns her to behave like a normal person for once, and Akatsuki pretends she understands. Seconds later, Kogure swoops in, grabs Akatsuki by the back of her collar like someone picking up a misbehaving pet, and carries her away. She screeches in protest, and Kogure bluntly tells her to stop pestering Mizuto and go cling to Yume, who looks lonely. Akatsuki immediately bolts back to Yum, latching onto her arm like a koala and whispering apologies, promising she'll never wander far from her again. After everyone retreats into their assigned apartments, Akatsuki and Kogure exchange one final warning through their open doors that neither should invade the other's space. Inside, Yumi finally asks what's going on between Akatsuki and Kogure, because their dynamic screams suspicious backstory. Akatsuki brushes off the idea immediately, claiming they're only neighbors and nothing else. Meanwhile, in the next apartment, Kogure is giving Mizuto the exact same explanation, saying he and Akatsuki have known each other since elementary school but aren't childhood friends, because that term is, apparently, too affectionate. Mizuto argues that they seem close anyway, but Kogure refuses to accept it. Then, out of nowhere, Kogure leans forward and asks Mizuto how far he's gone with Yume. Mizuto refuses to answer, so Kogure starts yelling through the paper-thin wall that Yume's body is for Mizuto's eyes only. Yume hears the entire thing and bangs the wall hard enough to rattle the frames, while Akatsuki frantically tries to calm her. Kogure proudly announces that the walls have the thickness of tissue paper, as if it's a feature rather than a problem. Mizuto decides to retaliate. He ties Kogure to a chair and begins reading from Kogure's diary with theatrical flair. He reveals that Kogure dreams of becoming a police officer so he can save Akatsuki and eventually marry her. On the other side of the wall, Akatsuki, mortified, slams her palms against the wall while Yume desperately tries to hold her back. From this back and forth, Mizuto concludes that Kogure and Akatsuki are much closer than either of them is willing to admit. That evening, they all coincidentally pick the same restaurant for dinner. Akatsuki had hoped for a private outing with Yume, but fate drops her right next to Kogure again. The air is thick with awkwardness. Eventually, the silence shatters when Kogure and Akatsuki start bickering about what they should order, insulting each other's choices like an old couple who can't agree on anything. Yume and Mizuto step away to grab drinks. Mizuto hesitates in front of the fountain like he's solving a difficult equation, and Yume mocks him for being clueless. She proudly demonstrates her signature blend, mixing multiple drinks like she's creating some magical potion. Mizuto copies her, trusting her confidence. When they return, Akatsuki bursts into laughter and reveals she tricked Yume into making the ugliest drink combination possible. Yume flushes red with embarrassment, and Kogure laughs at Mizuto for falling for it too. After the meal, Akatsuki slides beside Mizuto and sweetly asks him to tutor her in Japanese. Yume quietly watches, bothered by how close they suddenly seem. Mizuto asks what scheme she's running now. Akatsuki leans in and whispers that she's trying to provoke Yume into jealousy, so Yume will cling to her. Mizuto loudly tells Akatsuki she should ask Yume to tutor her instead, since Yume is way better at it. Yume beams with pride until Mizuto immediately ruins it by reminding her she only gets good grades because she works herself to death, while he gets high scores without trying. Yumi's smile dies instantly. Akatsuki also pouts, irritated Mizuto stole her thunder. Back at Kogure's apartment, Mizuto is studying seriously while Kogure is texting both girls in a group chat, complaining that Mizuto is grinding way harder than someone who supposedly doesn't need to. Akatsuki messages back that she and Yume are studying too. Yume reminds Kogure how brutal the entrance exams were, and warns him not to slack. Kogure then shouts into Mizuto's room asking how hard the exams will be. Mizuto answers without hesitation, ridiculously difficult. Kogure's soul leaves his body. He had assumed high school would be smooth once he got in. Reality hits him like a truck. Kogure asks why Mizuto is suddenly serious, and Mizuto calmly says he refuses to lose to Yume. Kogure decides he wants to outperform Akatsuki for once and grabs his books to study beside him. Sometime later that night, Mizuto steps onto the balcony for some air. He hears a soft noise and looks over to see Yume on the neighboring balcony. They both tense up, embarrassed to be caught moon-watching. Mizuto teases her giraffe print pajamas, and Yume huffs that Akatsuki forced her into them. After a little teasing, they both fall silent and look up at the night sky. Yume suddenly says, "The moon looks lovely tonight," making Mizuto freeze. She brings up their middle school trip, recounting how that was the moment she began falling for him. Mizuto asks why she's suddenly revisiting their past. Yume admits that Kogure and Akatsuki made her wonder whether the time she spent with Mizuto even mattered. Mizuto answers that, unlike Kogure and Akatsuki, their bond doesn't need a reason. As long as their parents stay married, they'll remain tied together. Yume quietly asks if he thinks their parents will ever split up. Mizuto says no. They both realize their step-sibling relationship is effectively permanent. Unfortunate for both of them. A few days later, after classes end, Akatsuki hurries over and asks Yume to walk home with her. Yume declines because she's heading to the study hall. Akatsuki's shoulders droop, but Yume apologizes and runs off. Yuma's classmates reassure Akatsuki not to feel guilty, saying if she sulks, Yuma will feel even worse. Midterms inch closer, and as the school's unofficial academic queen, Yuma is determined to reclaim the #1 spot. She recalls the first time she was ever beaten in her best subject, math. The culprit? Mizuto. She remembers staying up late, torturing herself with study sessions to reclaim first place. But when she finally won, Mizuto barely reacted. Her victory felt hollow. Only later did she realize he cared deeply but hid it behind indifference. Her feelings for him quietly grew from there. This time around, she's grinding harder than ever. Mizuto, on the other hand, is lounging with novels like Finals or Centuries Away. Yuma confronts him about it, and Mizuto confidently replies that he's already prepared. She doubts him and reminds him that this attitude is why she often scores higher. That comment sparks something in him. Mizuto suddenly decides he's going to take first place just to wipe the smug look off her face. Yuma rolls her eyes, thinking there's no way he'll pull it off. After the first exam day, Yuma feels okay about her performance, but can't stop thinking about Mizuto's score. She becomes obsessed with figuring out his results. Eventually, she waits until he's out and sneaks into his room to check his script. She finds it, notices unanswered questions, and storms out to confront him. Mizuto claims he ran out of time. Yumi calls it a lie, reminding him that she saw him put down his pen with time left. To her, his behavior feels like he's saying, "I could beat you whenever I want," and she hates that thought with a passion. Yuni, who has been silently observing like an NPC, intervenes before Yuma smacks Mizuto. She's confused and panicked, calling Minaki when the argument escalates. Mizuto calmly explains he held back so Yume could keep the top spot she values so much. Unlike her, he doesn't care what others think. He asks if what he did was really that wrong. Yuma replies, "It's not about right or wrong, it just hurts." Her voice cracks, she tears up, and she walks away. She forces herself to keep studying, telling herself that at least she won't have to compete with him this time. The next morning, Mizuto approaches her immediately. He tells her she has no authority to decide who he is, and he doesn't get to define her either. Then he coldly declares she should kiss her first place title goodbye, because he won't hold back again. Exam days pass. Results finally drop. Yumi takes a deep breath. She's second. Mizuto is first. Before the shock settles, Mizuto walks in. Yumi quickly realizes that for Mizuto to make up for all the points he threw away earlier, he must have studied harder than she expected. That level of effort is completely unlike him. Mizuto says he simply wanted to see what being at the top feels like. Then he adds that he actually envies her position more because being second seems less suffocating. He tells her she can reclaim her spot during finals if it matters that much and walks away. Yuma sinks into despair. She believes people only liked her because she was always #1. But then Akatsuki and her other friends rush to her side, treating her exactly the same as before. They joke, comfort her, and act like nothing changed. Yuma starts crying. She finally understands what Mizuto meant. Her worth isn't tied to perfection. She isn't loved for being flawless, she's loved for being herself. She rushes to find him. She goes straight to the place she knows he usually retreats to. But when she arrives, Mizuto is already there talking with another girl, Isana. And the worst part, he's telling Isana almost the exact same kind of comforting lines he once said to Yuma back when they first properly got close. Yuma immediately reads deep meaning into it. Isana, meanwhile, is Mizuto's one and only true close friend, the only person he's ever naturally clicked with, someone he probably won't find a replacement for ever again. When classes finish for the day, Yuma and Akatsuki walk out together and run into Mizuto, who happens to be standing with a girl half hidden behind him like she's avoiding direct eye contact with the entire planet. Akatsuki instantly fixates on the stranger and asks who she is. Mizuto introduces her as Isana. Akatsuki steps forward with full enthusiasm and offers a dramatic handshake. But Isana panics and jerks her hand away. Mizuto quickly shields her, explaining that Isana gets overwhelmed easily and needs space. Akatsuki raises a brow, surprised at how protectively he reacts. Before she questions him further, she asks if Isana has met Yuma yet, only to notice that Yuma has already slipped away. Akatsuki runs after her. Meanwhile, Isana quietly asks who Yuma is. Mizuto answers, "She's my younger stepsister," which leaves Isana blinking in shock. Back at home, Yumi tries to sort out her feelings. She keeps reminding herself she has no right to feel jealous. They're not a couple anymore. they're supposed to be behaving like siblings. She repeats that to herself until the words lose all meaning. The next morning, she begins acting. Strangely, she becomes overly polite, overly cheerful, overly helpful, the type of too nice behavior that makes you suspicious. She's planning something criminal. Even Mizuto, who usually ignores most things, notices instantly. He later vents to Isana about it, saying Yuma's been acting off in a way he can't explain. He mentions that their interactions don't irritate him anymore, which is honestly more unsettling to him than anything else. Isana encourages him to talk to Yum, but admits she probably shouldn't be giving relationship advice. Mizuto still wants her thoughts anyway, and ends up using her perspective to push himself into confronting Yum. That evening, Mizuto sits down with Yum for a serious conversation. He tells her that he hates how she's been behaving recently. The overly sweet tone, the forced politeness, the fake cheerfulness, none of it sounds like her at all. Yume holds her breath before finally confessing the truth. She's jealous of Isana, and she absolutely knows she shouldn't be, considering the sibling situation. After saying everything, she asks what bothered him the most. Mizuto answers honestly. He couldn't stand the way she was pretending their past didn't exist. The tension between them is heavy enough to choke on. Yume then quietly asks if her jealousy is wrong, since they're technically family now. Mizuto immediately labels it creepy and starts teasing her, which breaks the seriousness for a moment. Later on at school, Yum formally meets Isana, and Mizuto makes a point of showing that their relationship is strictly friendship, nothing romantic. Once everyone understands that, the awkwardness fades. Yum's mind drifts back to how everything originally began between her and Mizuto. During summer break, they often ended up in the same quiet corner of the library, reading side by side without speaking. On the last day of break, she wrote a confession letter and planned to leave it in his locker, but Mizuto appeared out of nowhere and caught her in the act. Flustered, she shoved the letter into his hands and regretted it immediately. He stayed silent while reading, and she almost died from embarrassment, until he accepted her confession, and they started dating. Back in the present, Isana opens her locker at school and finds a disturbing note saying someone knows her secret and demanding she show up at a specific spot. Terrified, she goes only to find Yum and Akatsuki waiting. They admit the note was their ridiculous prank and apologize, although the mention of her secret wasn't entirely a joke. Isana starts panicking again, trying to guess what they discovered. In her frantic rambling, she ends up revealing even more than she meant to. Eventually, Akatsuki bluntly states their conclusion. Isana likes Mizuto, not platonically. Isana responds with a confused yes, because she thought they meant normal, friend liking. When they clarify they mean romantic liking, she freezes. She claims she doesn't know anything about love and insists they're mistaken. Yum and Akatsuki decide to test her. Every time they bring up Mizuto compliments, quirks, anything, Isana turns red and flustered. That settles it, she definitely has feelings. Still, she hesitates. She says she's never felt anything like this before, so she isn't sure how to process it. Akatsuki decides this is the perfect time to form a plan. She and Yum will help Isana win Mizuto's heart. Even Yum is stunned at the sudden declaration. Isana says she's fine with just being friends, but deep down she's afraid of looking pathetic if she tries too hard. This reminds Yum too much of her own past insecurities, and she refuses to let Isana go through it alone. She tells her not to give up until she's sure she has no regrets. With that push, Isana finally admits she wants to be Mizuto's girlfriend, and their operation officially begins. Their first strategy is observation, studying how Mizuto acts around Isana to find a weakness. Unfortunately, he spends the entire time reading and doesn't spare Isana a single glance. Very promising. Next, Akatsuki suggests Isana try getting more physically close to him, but Mizuto reacts like someone whose personal bubble is reinforced with steel. He simply shifts away without emotion. No blush, no stutter, just mild confusion. Eventually, Isana wants to back out. She says she doesn't want to risk their friendship. She wonders aloud whether liking someone automatically means destroying what already exists. Yum realizes how differently Isana views relationships for her. Romantic feelings are just another layer of friendship, not a separate category. Yumi promises not to force her into strange behavior again. Akatsuki disagrees and insists Isana simply lacks confidence. Her next master plan, a makeover. After the makeover, Isana approaches Mizuto with styled hair and glossy lips. Mizuto's response? Did you eat fried chicken? Your mouth looks oily. Then he warns her about gaining weight. Yum and Akatsuki nearly die on the spot. Isana tries to sit closer to him, but he shifts away every time, like she has magnets repelling him. When she finally asks why he keeps dodging, he says he likes his personal space and threatens to show her hell. His version of hell is messing up her hair like a bored toddler. She calls it bullying and forces him to fix her hair again. Later, Akatsuki decides Isana should confess that very same day. Isana almost faints. Yume tries to slow things down, but Akatsuki insists now is the best chance. Eventually, Mizuto agrees to meet Isana. Akatsuki hits Yume with the question she was scared of. Are you excited that your stepbrother might get a girlfriend? That question lingers in Yume's mind longer than she'd like. Isana gathers her courage, while Yume and Akatsuki watch from a distance. Mizuto arrives with his usual unreadable expression. Isana struggles to speak, stumbling on her words. Mizuto gently tells her to say whatever she can and he'll make sense of it. Finally, Isana gets it out. She has loved talking to him. He never belittled her. She enjoys every moment they spend together, and she would like to be his girlfriend. She likes him for real. Silence. Then Mizuto responds. He says he thought she only liked him as a friend, and she confirms she still does. He admits he enjoys being around her too. She's the only person he's ever clicked with naturally. But then the truth lands. He can't accept her feelings. He says they would work well as a couple, but he can't return her feelings because his heart is already tied to someone else. He apologizes sincerely. Isana handles the rejection surprisingly well. At least she got honest closure. Yume, watching from afar, feels tears building because she knows exactly who he meant. Her mind drifts back to what Akatsuki told her. If someone like Mizuto actually wants a girlfriend, it means he needs that person deeply. Yume doesn't understand why he'd still want her someone he shouldn't be with when someone kinder like Isana exists. Later, at the library, Isana casually says she wants to look through Mizuto's books and borrow a few. Mizuto warns her that going to his house alone might feel awkward. She replies that since she already confessed and he rejected her, she sees no reason to be nervous if he didn't want her romantically. He definitely won't try anything. Mizuto tries to argue but ends up speechless. Later, Isana meets up with Yume and Akatsuki, and the moment the two girls see her outfit, they both react instantly. They tell her straight up that her clothes look outdated, and they're relieved they caught her before she went to Mizuto's place dressed like that. To avoid embarrassing herself in front of him, they decide they'll revamp her style. Isana shyly mentions that she doesn't have money for shopping, but Yume assures her she'll cover everything on one condition. Isana must wear whatever they choose without complaining. The makeover begins, and Isana steps out in outfit after outfit while the other two wait eagerly outside the changing room. A lot of the clothes look good, but are too revealing for Isana's usual vibe. Akatsuki is way too excited, treating Isana like a life-size dress-up character. Isana suggests wearing something simple so she doesn't stand out too much, but Akatsuki insists she isn't thinking big enough. She wants something that fits Isana's natural look, but still makes her shine. Akatsuki points out that the dress Yume is wearing would match Isana's build perfectly. The only problem is that they can't have both girls wearing the same style, so Akatsuki casually decides that Yume should also update her fashion. That's when Yume suddenly realizes she's also being forced into this makeover. Yume has always avoided tight or bold clothing. Back when she and Mizuto were dating, she tried very hard to dress nicely for him but never got a reaction. Yume remembers a date where she spent hours researching the perfect outfit. Mizuto didn't say a word about her clothes the entire time, and she thought she looked terrible. But right as they were about to say goodbye, Mizuto finally commented that her skirt was too short for public. He wasn't mad, he just didn't want others looking at her. That tiny sign of possessiveness made Yume ridiculously happy, and ever since then, she has based her outfits on what she thought Mizuto would like. Now, she realizes she needs to let go of that old mindset. After their own transformations, Yume steps out in a completely new look that leaves Akatsuki and Isana speechless. She actually likes it too. Then Isana comes out wearing the dress Akatsuki picked for her. She feels it's a bit too cute, but Akatsuki assures her that it suits her perfectly. With both girls dressed up, they're ready for the big visit. Meanwhile, Yume remembers the time Mizuto invited her to his house because she needed a book series he owned. She panicked at the idea of going into a boy's room, and Mizuto sensed how nervous she was, so he ended up bringing the books to school the next day instead. Neither of them was brave enough for that step back then. Isana finally arrives at Mizuto's home. His parents stare silently as Mizuto brings her inside, And even though Mizuto tries to say Isana is just a friend, his parents clearly don't buy it. When Isana enters his room, she freezes at the sight of his massive book collection. She asks if she can look around, and Mizuto tells her to feel free. Yume follows behind them like a police officer, making sure Mizuto doesn't get within a 2-meter radius of Isana. Isana eventually picks a book she likes and casually sits on Mizuto's bed to read it. Yume is stunned, but Mizuto and Isana act like it's the most natural thing in the world. Yume just watches quietly as they both focus on their own reading. When Isana finishes the book, she complains about stiff shoulders and asks Mizuto for a shoulder massage. After some convincing, he gives in and massages her shoulders. At that point, Yume mentally collapses, not because she's jealous, but because she feels like they have zero sense of boundaries. Mizuto and Isana don't understand why she's freaking out. To them, this is normal. Yume reminds them that neither of them had friends before, but they casually insist they had at least one or two, which only makes the situation more ridiculous. The chaos continues when Isana asks Mizuto to help her put on her socks. He does it like it's nothing. Yume steps out with Isana to show her the bathroom and asks if she still likes Mizuto. Isana openly admits she does, but also says she liked him as a person even before she liked him romantically. She values the friendship more than anything and says being replaced as a friend would hurt more than losing him as a crush. After returning to Mizuto's room, Yume confronts him. She asks why he and Isana act so casually with each other, and he says it's simply because it's Isana. That snaps something in Yume. She suddenly pulls off her socks and demands he put them on her too. She claims it's just for fun, but it clearly looks like she's competing. Mizuto reluctantly helps her. Right then, he gets a text from Isana asking for backup downstairs. When they arrive, they find her struggling to answer awkward questions from Mizuto's parents. Later, as he walks her out, she tells Mizuto that his parents now think she's his ex because she told them he rejected her. She confesses she still hasn't recovered from being turned down, and jokes that he should comfort her sometimes. Mizuto doesn't mind. Isana says she had a great time, and that staying inside reading books is her ideal weekend. Mizuto thinks back to his old relationship with Yume. They used to spend hours reading together too. Before she leaves, Isana calls him a good friend. Mizuto then wonders if he and Yume would have remained close if they had never dated at all. But he quickly brushes off the thought, thinking neither of them could ever compete with how easily things worked with Isana. The flashback continues to the early days of Mizuto and Yume's relationship. Their first kiss was soft and awkward, with both of them turning red afterward. When Yume visited his room for the first time, she was nervous, and Mizuto didn't know how to act. She sat on his bed, expecting maybe another kiss, but Mizuto just grabbed a comic and suggested they read. After hours passed, she tried again, and he fumbled again, only offering to walk her home. They had been dating for half a year with almost no progress, and Yume left disappointed that night. Mizuto also felt frustrated because he actually wanted to close the distance but kept hesitating. When the new school year started, they both hoped to be in the same class, but the list separated them. They pretended it didn't bother them, but both were silently upset. They continued meeting in the library, and Yume confessed she was scared she wouldn't make friends in her new class. Mizuto reassured her they'd spend time together after school, on weekends, and during holidays. She felt better hearing that. But slowly, Yume made a new friend, a girl who liked reading too. Yume's confidence grew a little, and she even talked to this girl first. Yume started talking non-stop about her new friend. Mizuto listened quietly but felt uneasy. When he finally called to invite her out one weekend, she had already made plans with the new friend. That's when jealousy finally hit him, not because she had someone else, but because he feared she'd start choosing others over him. The following morning, Yume heads to the library at the time she normally meets Mizuto, but she doesn't spot him anywhere. She eventually finds him on the road, headed home, and quickly apologizes for being late. She explains she got stuck talking with her friends, and one of them wouldn't shut up. Mizuto responds in a stiff, cold tone and simply continues walking. Yume trails behind, rambling about her friends to fill the silence. But Mizuto suddenly stops and tells her sharply to drop the topic because he's not interested. Yume forces a small smile and pretends she's fine, but the words sting. That night, Mizuto lies awake, replaying his attitude, and regrets how harsh he was. He makes up his mind to apologize the next day. The next day, Yume cancels all her plans with her friends to meet Mizuto early at the library. But when she arrives, her heart tightens. Mizuto is already there, talking to a girl sitting in her usual seat. Yum freezes, misreads the scene instantly, and hides behind a bookshelf instead of going over. Once the girl leaves, Yum approaches him. Mizuto immediately apologizes for how he behaved before, and says he felt like she was drifting farther away from him. He admits that at first he was happy she was making new friends, but eventually he started wishing she would stay closer to him. Before he can continue, Yum lashes out. She calls him two-faced. He hates it when she hangs around other people. Yet here, he is talking to another girl in their spot. Mizuto is stunned. He tries to explain the girl only asked him for a book suggestion, but Yume won't hear it. She assumes he must have been talking to her the day she arrived late. Mizuto strongly denies it, saying this is literally their first conversation ever. But Yum, still upset, accuses him of cheating. Mizuto snaps back, raising his voice and insisting he didn't cheat. The moment he yells, he apologizes for shouting, but Yum is already storming off. Later at home, after cooling down, she realizes the whole thing was just her emotions taking over. Deep down, she knew it didn't add up, but she was too hurt to think straight. Meanwhile, Mizuto lies in bed feeling guilty. He understands he acted out of jealousy and insecurity. He hated the idea that Yum might be leaving him behind. He now realizes she wasn't pitying him, she was trying to be thoughtful in her own way. He regrets his words and wishes he handled things maturely. A few days later, they accidentally meet inside a bookstore. They both reach for the same book and freeze awkwardly. Even though Mizuto wants the book, he lets her take it. They end up grabbing food afterward. Mizuto finally speaks, saying it's pointless to keep avoiding each other and pretending things are fine. He apologizes again for the fight in the library. Yum accepts it. On the walk home, Mizuto wonders how long Yum planned to stay silent if he hadn't spoken first. At the same time, Yum wonders why Mizuto is walking ahead instead of beside her like before. Mizuto thinks about how he already apologized after she accused him, but she hasn't said sorry even once. Yume wonders if they're truly okay or just pretending everything is patched up. While walking, Yum notices a poster for a festival. Later, she wants to text Mizuto and invite him to go with her, but she freezes every time she tries to type the message. In the end, she goes by herself. She wanders around alone and ends up sitting in the same place she was lost before, secretly hoping Mizuto might somehow show up. Regret weighs on her, their bond is fading, and both of them know it. August 28 arrives, marking their first anniversary. Yume waits for a message from Mizuto, anything at all, but her phone stays silent. Her heart sinks. They hardly see each other now. Months pass. On Christmas, she watches couples laugh together, wishing it were her and Mizuto again. Mizuto stays home, flipping through TV channels and shutting off anything romantic. Valentine's Day arrives and disappears with no contact between them. Time slips by, and eventually graduation comes. Their relationship ends quietly, with no scene or drama, just the sense that things can't return to how they were. Mizuto feels both relieved and hollow. He loved Yume deeply but also carried so much resentment that it wore him down. After breaking up, he feels strangely lighter. But 2 weeks later, fate decides to be cruel. They meet again as step-siblings. Back in the present, Yum picks up a book from Mizuto's shelf, the same one they once read together in his old room. Instead of bringing back sweet memories, it triggers an argument. They blame each other for misunderstanding things back then, and during the heated exchange, both finally admit that they wanted something more that day, but were too scared to act. The realization only makes things more awkward. One stormy night, Yum is texting her mom, who says the train stopped because of a typhoon and the adults won't make it home. As Yuma reads the message, she spots an antenna poking out from behind something. Then the monster comes into view. She shrieks and sprints to Mizuto's room in full panic, stumbling over her words. Mizuto asks if it's a cockroach, and she practically convulses at the mention of it. He says he sprayed her room and locked the door, meaning the bug is still inside. Even though Mizuto is also terrified of roaches, Yuma refuses to sleep alone. She insists she has to stay in his room for the night. Mizuto asks if they really need to sleep on the same bed, trying to act annoyed even though he's clearly flustered. Yum teases him, saying he never had the guts to make a move back when they dated, either. He tells her to shut up and go to sleep. Hours later, he turns over and finds her face inches from his. Memories rush back. He reminds himself that he can't let leftover feelings linger now that they're step-siblings. The next morning, Yumi won't stop teasing him about being scared of cockroaches. Their parents walk in and see them bickering, calling it couple-like behavior. Their stepdad casually announces they'll all go to his hometown during Obon and that Mizuto and Yume should bring swimsuits. Both say they'd rather read, but their mom insists. She even suggests Yume take Mizuto out shopping for swimsuits. Yume panics, but has no real excuse, so she ends up agreeing. Mizuto waits outside Yume's room, and when she steps out wearing a cute outfit she bought during a previous shopping trip, he says nothing about how she looks. Instead, he asks why she has glasses on. Yume says she's trying not to be recognized in case people they know see them together. She hands him a cap, which he accepts after she mentions he's been weirdly popular lately thanks to topping the test scores. He refuses the glasses, though. At the swimsuit shop, Mizuto sits outside the fitting room, wondering why he's even involved in this. Yume wants to show him the swimsuit she chose because she can't decide. When she pulls the curtain back, revealing a cute bikini, Mizuto nearly faints and mutters a weak, "It looks nice." Yume demands a real compliment. Mizuto panics, tries to avoid mentioning anything about her body, and blurts out that she's very family-minded. Yume turns red and yells that she was talking about the swimsuit, not her personality. Mizuto wants to crawl into a hole. Yume chooses that swimsuit mostly because he was obviously stunned when he saw it. On the way home, Yume thanks him for keeping her company. Mizuto says he only did it because she couldn't refuse the adults. She laughs and says at least she got a swimsuit and caught him staring. Mizuto accuses her of trying to show off. Their banter stops when they reach a familiar wall, the place they shared their first kiss. Yume freezes. Mizuto tries acting normal, but the memory hits him too. The wind suddenly blows her hat off. Mizuto tries to catch it, misses, and ends up standing close to her. Yume closes her eyes, expecting a kiss. Mizuto leans forward a little, then panics and flicks her forehead instead. Back home, Yume returns the book she borrowed and shyly asks for more suggestions. Their parents watch from afar, whispering about how much they resemble a couple working up the courage to confess. Yume's embarrassed. Their mom apologizes, saying she's just shocked to see Yume being this comfortable with a boy. Yume groans. Meanwhile, Mizuto realizes that if their parents can tease them so casually, they truly see them as just siblings now, nothing more. Later, Mizuto is chilling on the couch with Yume and Isana while a movie plays. Isana is stretched across Mizuto's lap like it's her personal cushion, and he absent-mindedly pats her like a pet. Yume sits stiff on the side, pretending everything is normal while her insides twist. The mood gets even weirder when Isana pulls her collar down because she's too warm, and then starts scratching around her chest. Yume instantly assumes Isana is doing it on purpose and starts imagining ridiculous situations where Mizuto's hand slips. She giggles, and suddenly they're talking about marriage. The movie finally ends and Mizuto switches on the lights. Isana asks him what he thought, and he casually says it was decent. They fall into a full nerd talk discussion while Yume sits there, replaying every moment she hated. She sips water just so she has something to do. When her cup slips, Mizuto asks her to pour him some too. Too lazy to grab a clean glass, she tells him to use hers. He drinks without thinking. Isana reacts like she witnessed the scandal, saying it's basically a shared kiss moment. Mizuto and Yume don't even flinch, confusing her even more. Mizuto says he's tired and might crash right there. Isana immediately offers her lap as a pillow, but Yume blurts out that he can't. When Mizuto asks why, she completely freezes. Isana doubles down, bragging about her soft thighs and even joking about cleaning his ears. That last part freaks him out, so he leans toward Yume instead and falls asleep on her lap. Isana sulks but melts when she sees his sleeping face. While he rests, Isana starts whispering things like maybe she should mess with him or kiss him. Yume nearly agrees without thinking before snapping out of it and shutting it down. Isana laughs and says she'll wait for a moment when Yume isn't hovering like a guard dog. She also admits she wants her first kiss to be with Mizuto, that his touch makes her heart explode, but since he rejected her feelings earlier, she can't force anything. She even jokes about becoming benefit buddies with him, which horrifies Yume instantly. Isana shrugs, saying he wouldn't accept anyway. Before leaving, she teases Yume and calls her a brother-obsessed maniac. Yume tries to argue but Isana is already gone, leaving her alone with the sleeping boy. Yume sits quietly, staring at his peaceful face as her heartbeat races. For a second, she leans in like she wants to kiss him but stops herself. Softly, she whispers that wanting things to go back to the past is just leftover emotion, and acting on it could ruin the new family they just built. Their breakup and step-sibling situation, she tells herself, are things she isn't allowed to undo. Later that night, Yumi casually asks Yum what's going on between Mizuto and Isana. Since Isana keeps visiting, Yum tries to play it cool and says they just get along. Yumi wonders if Isana called herself an ex because she's embarrassed to say they're dating. Yumi doesn't deny it, which gets Yumi even more excited. She goes on and on about how opposite people make the best pair, and Yumi starts getting irritated. Then Yumi drops the classic parent line that Yumi should also get a boyfriend because she's cute now. Yumi walks off, muttering that she isn't competing with anyone. Back in her room, she admits under her breath that she can't see herself with anyone except Mizuto. And hearing her own words suddenly makes everything clear. She never moved on. Her mind jumps back to the end of summer in middle school. After their first festival date, she was still floating on happiness when Mizuto called her out of nowhere. He didn't even have a real reason. He just wanted to talk. She shyly told him she felt the same way. They talked nervously until he said her name like he had something big to confess. Then chickened out, claiming his battery was dying. They promised to talk again once break ended. After hanging up, she lay in bed wondering why he couldn't just plug in his phone and keep talking. Time skips forward to the present. The family arrives at the countryside to meet relatives. They greet Mizuto's grandmother, who is relieved he now has Yume, so he isn't alone all the time. Right as things settle, a girl jumps on Mizuto with a loud Mizutuu. It's his hyperactive second cousin, Mocha. She's thrilled he still acts like the same silent bookworm. Her shy little brother Chikuma hides behind her. Mocha becomes fast friends with Yum and invites her to the family barbecue by the river. At the barbecue, Mizuto hides under a tree with a book while everyone else chats or plays in the water. Yumi joins Mocha and Chikuma near the river. One of the older relatives praises Minamiaki for raising Mizuto alone after his wife passed away, explaining how the family worried for years. Hearing this, Yum decides she has to protect this new family no matter what. Mocha snaps her out of her thoughts by complimenting her waist and swimsuit. When Yum says she didn't pick it alone, Mocha assumes a boyfriend helped. Yum denies it, but when her eyes drift toward Mizuto, Mocha notices instantly. Yuma tries denying she has feelings for him but fails miserably. Instead of pushing, Mocha says she's jealous because even after knowing Mizuto since kindergarten, he never let her in emotionally. After eating, Mizuto decides to go home early. His father thanks him for helping earlier, which confuses Yum. Mocha begs him to stay, but he leaves anyway. Mocha then drags Yum into the river, laughing like a gremlin. Later that night, Yume helps serve drinks to relatives until Mocha tells her she can rest. She also asks Yum to remind Mizuto that it's his turn for the bath, and that he's probably in their great-grandfather's study. Yumi finds him there, absorbed in a thick book. She gives the message, and he sets the book aside. Curious, she asks why he doesn't use bookmarks. He says he doesn't need them. He remembers every detail. He explains the book is special, a self-published autobiography written by his great-grandfather, never sold, barely even known. As a kid, Mizuto picked it up because it didn't list an author, and he's reread it every year. It was the first full book he ever got through alone. It tells the story of the years his great-grandfather spent trapped in the Soviet Union after the war and the woman he met there. Mizuto tells her she can read it herself if she wants the full story. She takes it, feeling strangely honored. While reading, she reaches a heartbreaking part and accidentally drips a tear onto the page. When she tries to dab it away, she notices faint dried tear marks already. They're proof Mizuto cried over the same moment. That image hits her hard. The boy who spent his whole childhood alone in a study, crying quietly over a book. When he returns from his bath, Yum finishes reading. She mentions that his great-grandfather clearly fell in love, then casually asks what Mizuto's first love was like. He answers that she laughed a lot. Yume instantly imagines Mocha and assumes she was his first crush, which stings more than she expected. The next day, while choosing festival outfits, Yume stays quiet. Mocha asks if something happened with Mizuto. Yume says it's not him, it's her. She realizes she's been selfish, treating Mizuto like a fantasy instead of a real person with his own life. Mocha asks plainly if she loves him. Yume panics and says she's not sure, then asks Mocha what love means. Mocha says your heart pounds when they're close and you imagine kissing them. She teases Yum for clearly thinking about someone. Yum tries to separate love from lust, but Mocha doesn't have a perfect answer. Instead, she asks whether Yum keeps burying her own emotions to avoid choosing Mizuto. That question shakes Yum deeply. Mocha says she'll help. Later, Yumi waits alone in an empty room. After a while, Mocha walks in with Mizuto, pretending it's some random chore he needs to do. When they see each other, both freeze. Mocha claims she'll be gone for 30 minutes and shuts the door, leaving them alone. Mizuto thinks Yume asked for this and asks what she wants to say. Yume says nothing. They sit apart in silence. Yume's thoughts swirl, meeting his family, reading the book, seeing how she treated him before all of it. She realizes she kept clinging to old feelings while refusing to admit them, hurting him and herself. She stands, walks toward him, and finally understands what she needs to do. Mizuto was her first love. When he said they should break up, she felt relieved because the pain stopped. But she never wanted the relationship to end. She regrets not calling him that summer, not giving him gifts, not saying she wanted to stay together. Her eyes fill with tears. Mizuto quietly suggests that, maybe just this once, they act like they could rewind time. That breaks her completely. She hugs him tightly, crying into his shoulder, whispering his name again and again as everything she's buried spills out at last. After she finally settles down, Mizuto gently asks what she had wanted to talk about earlier. Yume gathers herself and admits that the idea of Mocha being his first love strangely bothered her. Mizuto just blinks at her, baffled. He honestly has no memory of ever liking Mocha that way. When she brings up the odd question she asked the day before, he suddenly recognizes why she had been acting weird. He jokes that she may look brilliant on her report cards, but inside, she's a complete disaster. Yume mentally loses another dignity badge. As he gets up to leave, he casually tells her she has snot on her nose. She panics and wipes it immediately, only for him to say he was joking. She lets out a laugh at his dumb humor. Before walking off, he reminds her that he said his first love laughed a lot. Yume freezes, her brain finally connecting the dots he had meant her the entire time. During the festival, everyone puts on traditional outfits. Mocha circles around Yume, praising how nice she looks, though Yume misreads it as Mocha teasing her. When Mocha turns to Chikuma, he shyly agrees Yume looks beautiful. Even Mizuto arrives dressed for the occasion. Mocha immediately asks his opinion of Yume, but before he can answer, Yume nervously asks for a picture instead. She tries to take one of Mizuto, but Mocha snatches her phone and hands it to him so he can take a picture of the girls. Mizuto unlocks it instantly, shocking Yume. He somehow knows her password. At the festival grounds, the two of them stand awkwardly at the edge, like social battery-dead introverts. Yume quietly asks why he even comes every year, and he explains that Mocha drags him along because she has no one else to accompany her. He then asks Yume the same question, and she admits she doesn't have pleasant memories of festivals. Mocha returns with Chikuma and remarks on the packed crowds, suggesting Yume and Mizuto hold hands so they don't get lost. Mizuto immediately rejects the idea, saying they're not kids. But while he's explaining, Yume suddenly grabs his hand and claims that siblings do this all the time. Mocha backs her up. Mizuto tries to object, but eventually gives up. It's just hand-holding. Feeling much lighter after her emotional meltdown the previous day, Yume teases him while they walk. Eventually, they reach a shooting booth. Chikuma tries first but misses badly. Mizuto reluctantly agrees to go next. Mocha jokingly tells Yume to help him like a big sister, so she stands behind him, surprising him when she grabs him to adjust his aim. Her legs wobble and she loses balance, pressing into him accidentally. The jolt makes him pull the trigger and somehow he nails the target. Yume jokes that the prize doesn't suit him, but Mizuto gives it to Chikuma, who beams with happiness. Yume asks how he knew that was the toy the kid wanted, and he explains it's from a game Chikuma talks about often. She's impressed. He noticed the small detail. Mizuto brings up the earlier moment and bluntly asks if Yume did it intentionally. She quickly denies it, and he seems relieved she wasn't trying anything suspicious. Compared to Isana's boldness, Yume is always shy and flustered. She feels offended that he called her less experienced, but the conversation is cut short as Mocha urges them to move. Back at the house, Yume is introduced to the elder relative, Ketwin, who lovingly asks her to watch over Mizuto. Yume politely agrees, although she quietly wonders why everyone treats him like he needs constant supervision. Ketwin explains that she saved seats for them to watch the fireworks, but Mizuto is missing again. Mocha explains that he always disappears right before the fireworks every year. Things begin to make sense for Yume. He must have been uncomfortable by the river earlier, but still came along for everyone's sake. She recalls last year's phone call where wind could be heard in the background at almost the same time the fireworks began. It matches perfectly. Determined, Yume decides to search for him. Mizuto sits beside an old hut, lost in his thoughts. He reflects on how distant everything has always felt to him, as if he was living behind glass. Books had been the only things that felt alive. His great-grandfather's memoir opened up the idea of human weakness and struggle. Stories became his reality. When he first met Yum, she didn't feel important. But when she got lost during their first date, something clicked. He saw her vulnerability and understood how others must have felt about him. From that moment on, she became more meaningful than any book he had ever read. Yume finally spots him. She catches her breath and teases him for hiding in gloomy corners again. He assumes she came to ridicule him for not socializing with his relatives, but she tells him she already knows he's like that. She recalls the spot he called her from last year and jokes that he must have really liked her back then. Surprisingly, he doesn't deny it. She sits down beside him and asks if he remembers the date of their first kiss. He does. She isn't shocked. It's the password to her phone. That means he once used it too. She blushes thinking about how she practiced for that moment. He teases her, and she snaps back that he'd be more attractive if he spoke less. He calmly replies that he has no reason to fit her ideal type. They both laugh it off. When she asks why he chose to date her, he answers that he probably would have dated anyone, but she happened to be the first one he connected with. Somehow, that answer is enough for her. The fireworks begin. Mizuto's eyes well up. Yume gently places her hands on his cheeks and kisses him softly. He's startled but doesn't move away. Yume's heart aches, but she promises herself she'll win him over again as the person she is now. The next morning, as they prepare to leave the countryside, Mocha asks Yume how things went. Yume replies that things moved forward in a big way. Mocha celebrates with her. Chikuma shyly clings to Yume before saying goodbye. She visits Granny Natsume one last time, who tells her to keep caring for Mizuto. Yume says he can manage himself, but she'll gladly look out for him. As they head out, Mizuto asks what she talked about with Granny. Yume smirks and tells him to guess. He seems dazed by her new confidence. She shrugs and reminds him that they're step-siblings now. Back at school, Kuro meets Isana, and they instantly dislike each other. Yume stays alert, watching to make sure Mizuto and Isana keep a respectful distance. Despite everything, the Arito step-siblings continue forward, knowing they can't return to the past, but maybe they can build something different from it. And that's where this video ends. If you made till the ends, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Also watch this following video. Until next video.